In this short video, we'll be taking a look at Presentism, a theory from the philosophy of time. The philosophical thought featured here comes from Ned Marcosian's paper, A Defense of Presentism, which is certainly worth checking out for a fuller and more in-depth understanding of the issues at hand. Presentism is the view that the only things which exist are those that exist at this moment in time. Surely this is too obviously true to be worth noting, I hear you say. I'd be inclined to agree, but some philosophers, in their inimitable, pedantic way, beg to differ. Ask a person if Socrates exists, and they'll probably find the question a bit odd. Their answer is most likely to be, well, he did, but not anymore. He's dead a long time now. This is in line with the presentist mode of thinking intuitive to most of us. A non-presentist will counter this, however, by claiming that you can't make meaningful statements, known as singular propositions, about things that don't exist. For example, for me to make the proposition, my brother lives in Ballymarcosian, both my brother and Ballymarcosian need to exist. Neither do, so by saying that, I'm not really saying anything at all, and certainly not saying anything true. This is an issue with the presentist claim that Socrates doesn't exist, as it must entail that the statement, Socrates was a philosopher, is not true, which flies in the face of both our intuitions and presentism, and appears to be obviously wrong. Surprisingly, Marcosian agrees with the non-presentist, but is perfectly happy to consider the proposition, Socrates was a philosopher, to be untrue. The reason the average person might make such a proposition and believe it to be true is down to something philosopher Ted Sider coined quasi-truth. Consider that when we say Socrates was a philosopher, we're really saying something else, something much more logically and semantically dense. Something along the lines of, there exists a thing X, such that X is the notion of the person referred to as Socrates, and X has been, at some point, a philosopher. Unlike the fictional village of Ballymarcosian, the notion of Socrates really does presently exist. So too does the profession of philosopher. So, the roundabout phrase, there exists a thing X, allows us to make a singular proposition about Socrates having been a philosopher without having to accept the counterintuitive idea that Socrates still exists. Day to day, however, we're much more likely to say Socrates was a philosopher, with all of the complex background philosophical clutter taken as an unspoken given. This makes the phrase, Socrates was a philosopher, a quasi-truth, a statement that is true only in virtue of some other philosophical facts. Using quasi-truths in our daily lives is a handy way to streamline our communication. Marcosian quips, as a practical matter, it turns out that you can't be doing serious ontology all the time. Another issue faced by presentism is the fact that we refer to bygone eras all the time. The 10th century, the 1890s, the 1980s. The fact that we acknowledge these time periods in such an organised manner seems to undermine the notion that only the present exists. Marcosian answers this qualm by comparing the concept of time to the concept of worlds. Most are familiar with the notion of alternative worlds, wherein all but perhaps one feature aligns with those in our own world. In another world, I might have a third eyebrow. In another, I might be 6'6". But these worlds are abstract, and only one of them truly exists, the one that's identical to the world in which we find ourselves right now. We can consider all times past, and all times to come, to be just like these alternative worlds. They're abstract with all of their idiosyncrasies. In that time, Socrates is alive. Oh look, in that time, we're at zero carbon emissions. But the only time which is actual, which exists, is the one which aligns precisely with the time we find ourselves in right now, the present.